Somewhere between 1848 and 1950, an estimated 2.5 million people stood on a dock in a small Irish town and watched their home get smaller and smaller behind them. Most of them never came back. If your last name is Irish and your family's been in America, Canada, or Australia for more than a couple generations, there's a real chance this is where your family's story actually starts. Not some village you've never heard of. Here. And there's a second reason this town matters that most people have no idea about. I'll get to that one in a minute, and it involves the most famous ship that ever sank. This is Cove. Stick around, because by the end of this, you're going to want to go stand on that dock yourself. Before it was Cove, it was called Queenstown, renamed for a royal visit in 1849, and it stayed Queenstown for almost 80 years. It's built on a steep hill on the south coast, looking out over one of the largest natural harbors in the world, deep enough for the biggest ships of the age to sail right in. That's the whole reason this town exists the way it does. Not fishing, not farming, ships. By the mid-1800s, Queenstown wasn't just a port. For huge numbers of Irish families, it was the port, the last stretch of Irish ground most of them would ever stand on. And what happened here over the next 100 years is bigger than almost anyone realizes. Here's the number again, because it's worth saying slowly. 2.5 million people. Between the Great Famine in the 1840s and the years after World War II, that's roughly how many people emigrated through this one harbor. Some estimates for the peak famine years alone are staggering. Ships leaving packed beyond capacity, people paying with everything they had for a one-way ticket to Boston, New York, Halifax, Melbourne. Most left with a single trunk. Some left with nothing but what they were wearing. Families would walk for days from inland counties just to reach this harbor. And once that ship left, there was no calling home, no email. Sometimes it was years before a letter made it back, if one ever did. For a lot of families, the goodbye at this dock was the last time they ever saw each other. That's the story most people already sort of know. Immigration, the famine, the diaspora. You've probably heard the shape of it before. What most people don't know is what almost sailed out of this exact same harbor just a few decades later and never made it across. April 11th, 1912. The RMS Titanic makes her final stop before crossing the Atlantic. Right here, in Cove Harbor. Queenstown, as it was still called then. 123 passengers boarded that day. Local families, people emigrating for a new life, people who'd saved for years for that ticket, most of them boarding third class. 4 days later, the Titanic was at the bottom of the Atlantic. Of those 123 people who boarded here in Cove, the majority didn't survive. This town has a genuine, direct, physical connection to one of the most famous disasters in modern history. And it's not a footnote. There's a whole museum here, built on the exact spot where those passengers boarded, using the original White Star Line building. So this one harbor has both of these stories in it. A quiet, decades-long story of a whole nation leaving. And one single, catastrophic afternoon that's been retold in movies for over a century. Here's the thing. You can go stand in both of those stories today. Cove today is small. You can walk the whole seafront in 20 minutes. It packs in more than towns 10 times its size. St. Colman's Cathedral sits above the harbour and dominates the whole skyline. It's one of the tallest buildings in Ireland, and the bells alone are worth timing your visit around. The Titanic Experience Cove is built inside the actual White Star Line ticket office. You walk the same corridor those 123 passengers walked in 1912. And right along the harbour front, the houses are painted in that same row of bright colors you've probably seen in photos without knowing where they were. That's Cove, right there. If you're chasing family history, the Cove Heritage Centre has emigration records going back generations. Genuinely one of the best starting points anywhere in Ireland if you're trying to trace where your family actually left from. $2.5 million departures, one ship that never made it, and a small harbor town that's still standing exactly where all of it happened. That's Cove. If your family's Irish and you've never quite known where the story starts, there's a real chance it starts here. Full guides linked below with everything you need to actually plan the visit. And I want to know, did your family come through Cove? Do you actually know the story? Put it in the comments. I read every one, and I might make an episode out of the best one. See you next Monday.